Today I am here with JJ Johannes, and he is a broker and real estate agent for eXp Realty in Cedar Rapids. Hi, JJ.
Hello, Emily. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks for joining me. I wanted to talk to JJ about a conversation I frequently have with clients: Iowa City versus Cedar Rapids. I get a lot of people who are moving to the area and they're weighing their options. Do they want to move to Iowa City? Do they want to move to Cedar Rapids? What are the differences between the two communities and which is better? And as a real estate agent, it's not my job to tell somebody which is better. They're both different communities that are going to be better fits for different lifestyles, different price points, different interests. So I thought I would have you on today and we could just talk about some of the differences between the Iowa City real estate market and the Cedar Rapids real estate market. So can you briefly tell me and my viewers just a little bit about yourself?
Yes, well, again, thanks for having me on. So again, JJ Johannes with eXp Realty. Been involved in real estate for 19 years, been a real estate agent for the last 10 years, and helping people, buy and sell properties in both Cedar Rapids and the Iowa City market. And I agree with you, what you're saying there, that there is a difference between the two communities, and one or the other might be a better fit for some clients, just depending on what they're looking for and what is more attractive to them.
Yeah. So for viewers who maybe don't know, Iowa City and Cedar Rapids are actually in pretty close proximity to each other. Cedar Rapids is about 30 minutes driving time north of Iowa City, and there is a lot of interplay between the two communities. Straight shot north on the interstate, so you're going to find just a lot of free flow between people and business and shopping and ideas between Iowa City and Cedar Rapids. But they are very different places. Do you agree that they feel a lot different? The vibe is different?
Yeah, I definitely think that, the two communities both have unique, strong features, and they both definitely different in the vibe when you're going around town, the different type of housing, difference in a lot of the businesses and restaurants, and basically cultural part of things are different between the two.
Mm-hmm. So let's just start with some basic facts. Tell me, what is the approximate population in Cedar Rapids, the Cedar Rapids metro? And when we talk about the metro, what communities does that include?
Yeah, so the Cedar Rapids metro population is a little over 190,000. And so when you look at the Cedar Rapids metro area, you're looking at Cedar Rapids itself and then the adjoining communities that touch Cedar Rapids directly with their population. And so that's going to be Marion, which is the second biggest city. And then you have Hiawatha and Robbins, which are both on the north side of Cedar Rapids. Mm-hmm. And then on the south side, you have Fairfax that adjoins it to the southwest corner.
I was just creeping up in your territory this week. I closed on a house in Marion earlier this week. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so for comparison here, when we talk about the Iowa City metro, I'm talking about Iowa City, Coralville, North Liberty, and Tiffin. Those are all also conjoining communities. Now, the Census Bureau claims that the Iowa City metro is all of Johnson County and all of Washington County. And far southern Washington County is a good hour away, so I'm a little not so sure I agree with the Census Bureau, but they didn't call me and ask me. The Census Bureau claims that the Iowa City metro is about 171,500. But if I pull out Iowa City, Coralville, North Liberty, and Tiffin, Iowa City has 75,000 people, Coralville has 22,000, North Liberty has 19, and Tiffin has 4,000, which, if I break out my calculator, which I already did, so I didn't have to do it on this recording, that comes up to about 120,000. So Cedar Rapids is definitely larger than Iowa City, but neither place is what we would consider small by any means.
Correct.
Another, I think, significant factor or difference between the two is the average age. The average age of the population in Iowa City, I think, is going to be quite a bit younger because we have the University of Iowa located here, which is going to pull down our average age. Yep. Our average age here is probably about 26, which makes me feel like a really, really old lady. All right, so when I am meeting with new clients, especially relocation clients who are moving to Eastern Iowa and they're trying to figure out where to live, and they're looking between Iowa City and Cedar Rapids, the people that I encounter here in Iowa City are usually moving here for jobs, or they're moving here to be closer to family. So I thought we could talk for a minute about what some of the biggest employers are up there in the Cedar Rapids area, and then I can talk about what our biggest employers here in Iowa City are.
Yeah, so in Cedar Rapids, it's the same. When we see people moving to Cedar Rapids area, it's typically for jobs and proximity to family. That's the number 1 and 2 reason that I see people moving to the area. For jobs, the largest employer in the area is Collins Aerospace. Used to be Rockwell Collins. They were bought out, and now it's called Collins Aerospace. And very employment heavy on the engineer side of things. And so you see a lot of engineering and white collar jobs out of that. And then the second biggest employer is Transamerica. So they're into the insurance and financial service industry. And so that is the second biggest employer in the area. And then the third biggest employer is Unity Point, the Unity Point Health Hospital Network. And so the medical field there, that's the top 3 employers in our area of Cedar Rapids.
Okay. So here in the Iowa City area, by far our biggest employer is the University of Iowa. And then right behind that is the University of Iowa Hospitals and Clinics. Then we have the VA Hospital and Mercy Hospital. So we are very heavy on education-based jobs and medical-based jobs. Beyond those 2 segments, we have Rockwell International also, and then the Iowa City Community School District pops up as another major employer. So it's all like education, 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 and medical stuff here in Iowa City. So JJ, something you said that struck me that was interesting was white collar versus blue collar jobs, because when I'm trying to describe the differences between the vibe of Cedar Rapids and the vibe of Iowa City to people, and maybe I'm wrong, correct me if I am, my opinion is that Iowa City feels a little bit more like a white collar employment job opportunity type community, while there is a little bit heavier on the side for blue collar jobs in Cedar Rapids. Do you think that that's true?
I would agree with that. I think it's kind of close in that regards, but in Cedar Rapids, the blue collar jobs, you have General Mills, you have Quaker Oats, you have PMX, you have several manufacturing jobs, and there's a lot of them that are just out of that top 3 for employers. And there are some of those obviously in Cedar or in Iowa City. There's definitely manufacturing jobs there, but I think there's more manufacturing jobs in the Cedar Rapids area, especially on the southwest side of town. When you get on the south part of Cedar Rapids, you see there's more manufacturing companies out there in that particular area. And so I do agree that Cedar Rapids probably feels a little bit more blue collar and Iowa City feels a little bit more white collar. And there's obviously a blended mix in both communities.
So I decided to be a little nerdy and go on to the U.S. Census Bureau and look up their statistics from 2020. Iowa City in 2020 was reporting 86% white collar jobs and 14% blue collar jobs. Cedar Rapids was 75% white collar jobs and 25% blue collar jobs.
So a little bit more.
Yeah, but it's not, it's not mind-blowingly different. I wanted to pop on here real quick and talk a bit more about the vibe, the general feel of each one of these communities, Iowa City and Cedar Rapids. When people talk about a vibe, it's a general statement. And when you are online trying to do your research about what is Iowa City like or what is Cedar Rapids like, you're going to get people who are perpetuating what are general statements, and they can kind of blow them into myths or stereotypes. One of the myths that I have heard about Iowa City is that it's nothing more than just a bunch of college students. It's a giant party scene. And if you are an adult who's working an 8-to-5 job, you don't want to be around a party scene all the time. I mean, you've got to go to bed because you need to get up early the next morning. Well, we do have college students here, and there is a party scene downtown, especially on Friday and Saturday nights. That is not all that Iowa City is. There are entire miles and miles of neighborhoods surrounding the downtown and the campus area that are it's a regular town, and it's not going to be solo cups strewn across your yard every single night. So you don't need to worry about that. Yes, there is a party scene downtown if you're a college student and that's what you're looking for, but if that's not what you're looking for, you don't have to worry that you are going to be surrounded by drunken college students making a bunch of noise at 3 o'clock in the morning. A myth that I hear about Cedar Rapids is that it's nothing but a bunch of factories. When you're driving up I-380 through Cedar Rapids, you're going to be winding around these curves, and you are going to be going through a fairly industrial section of town. You are going to see those factories. They are front and center, but there's a whole lot more to Cedar Rapids besides just factories. So if you are curious about the communities, don't only rely on social media and forums to get your information. Take that information with a grain of salt. And if you really want somebody who can help you dive deep into what each place has to offer, reach out to your local friendly realtor. One of the things that I find buyers in Iowa City struggle with, especially if they are a blue collar worker, is the price of homes in Iowa City. Those statistics show a really interesting difference between the two communities, and there is no way to sugarcoat it. Homes in Iowa City are significantly more expensive. Correct. So if price is the number one factor for my buyers, sometimes we're up in Cedar Rapids looking because they just can't find the kind of house that they want or they need in Iowa City. Do you find that to be true for your clients?
Yes, I do. I think that, one of the things that you find is, depending on the buyer, there's definitely different attributes they want around the house, but then when you get into the house and you're talking about bedrooms, bathrooms, square footage, garage space, yard space, stuff like that, Cedar Rapids in general give you a little bit more bang for your buck. You can get a little bit more property. And so depending what they're looking for, and I had a client this past summer, we started our search in Iowa City. They weren't really connected to either place, but then we gravitated towards Cedar Rapids because of the addition. They wanted more bedrooms, and they wanted a little bit more square footage, and they saw more opportunities as far as available inventory for that in Cedar Rapids.
Yeah, I think at certain price points, especially the lower price points, that Cedar Rapids does have more to offer. When I'm working with clients and they, especially if they have a family unit where jobs are split, maybe one person is working in the Iowa City area and one person is working in the Cedar Rapids area, I find that I am looking in that North Liberty Tiffin zone a lot.
Yes.
But prices in North Liberty and Tiffin, not going to be on the inexpensive side. People end up there when they really want to live in Iowa City, but they have to acknowledge the fact that somebody is commuting to Cedar Rapids.
Yeah, and that's a pretty common, and some people will end up in the Swisher, Shoeyville, or Solon area, some of those small communities kind of in between, that drive in between. But yeah, there's, depending on what they're looking for, if you're looking for something that's probably 300,000 and under, and you want over 2,000 or maybe even 1,800 square feet, it can be a little bit more challenging in my experience. You're more experienced in Iowa City, but it can be a little bit more challenging to find that property. Where I find in Cedar Rapids, there is a little bit more opportunity for different available properties for them to look at. It might not be just one. They can go look at 6 as example.
So JJ and I both did some research on our MLSs today before we hopped on this recording to pull some specific home price numbers for our viewers. And JJ is reporting to me that the average home price, now when I say home price, I'm talking about single family, 0 lots, townhomes, and condos all together. The average sold home price here in 2022 so far is $233,760. That same house in the Iowa City metro, the average is $325,760. That's a pretty big difference. That's
a big jump. Yeah, and we can kind of dive into that, but part of that is the lower price point homes, obviously, in Cedar Rapids.
So for my math nerds out there, that price difference between the average home price Iowa City is coming in at 39% more expensive. But interestingly, that 39% does not correlate across each type of home. I was surprised to find out that it was different when we peel that apart to single family homes, zero lots, and condos. That difference in price varies quite a bit. So the average single family home price in Cedar Rapids, according to JJ, is $249,953. In Iowa City, the average single family home price, now this one is surprising, here in 2022 is $391,575. That means Iowa City single family homes are 56.6% more expensive than Cedar Rapids single family homes. Dang.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And, we could always compare like apples to apples on a house, but that comes into where Cedar Rapids, having more houses built probably pre-1980 has more of a, there's a lot more properties available under that 200, under that 150 house or 150 price point. And that's just kind of, bringing that average down further.
That's a good point.
Because I think when we look at you'll talk about the condos in the zero lot lines, when you look into those, you see that margin is pretty small in comparison to the first two numbers you looked at. And part of that is because at least in Cedar Rapids, and in my opinion, the condos and zero lot lines, most of the inventory is in the last 20 to 30 years. And that's going to be similar to Cedar Rapids. So we're talking more about age and size similarity versus when we go to single family homes, there's definitely a more inventory available in the lower price points because of more houses that are older.
I feel like my high school math teacher is talking to me right now about the importance of understanding the difference between average and median.
Yes.
And I think that these numbers that we're talking about are averages. And because Cedar Rapids does swing heavier on having a larger amount of less expensive properties in that like under $250,000 range, you just have a higher volume of those. That's going to pull your average price point down.
Yes.
Okay, so zero lot home prices. Average zero lot home price in Cedar Rapids is $251,588. And the average zero lot home price in Iowa City is $272,323, which is, let me see, that's only 8.2% more expensive for zero lots in Iowa City. And the Cedar Rapids average condo price is $199,908, while in Iowa City it's $229,300. Which makes condos in Iowa City about 15% more expensive.
Yep.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what these homes look like. Okay, so the first price point that we're going to talk about is around $150,000. And I asked JJ to give me some examples of homes that he's sold this year that fall within these various price points. So we're going to flip over to this screen here, and JJ sold 6504 Medford Lane Northeast in Cedar Rapids. It looks like it sold for $150,000. JJ, what can you tell us about this price point in Cedar Rapids?
So at that price point of $150,000 in Cedar Rapids metro area, you're typically going to be looking at some sort of split level, not a ranch. Probably not a two-story, usually a story and a half or a split level, split foyer, L foyer, whatever the different floor plan is. Usually built between the 1920s and 1950s is going to be the most common. You're going to see typically it's going to be 3 bedrooms, 1.5 bath, maybe 2 bathrooms, but typically 1.5 bath. And there's usually going to be a 1-stall garage that's either attached or detached. And then what would be considered kind of a small city lot as far as the yard space.
Okay, so I went digging around through my past sales to see if I could find anything in Iowa City that I've sold for under $150,000. And let me tell you, that is a really, really rough price point here. The last single family house that I sold for $150,000 or less. Honestly, when I listed it, I thought it was going to be a teardown. Like we were selling it for the lot and they were just going to raise the house. It was riddled with termites. It was a disaster. In order to come up with a home that is sold for about that price point, let's flip over here to a 12-plex condo. This one here at 2875 Triple Crown, it sold for $120,000. So that's going to be like a 2-bedroom, 1-bath, 850 square foot condo with a detached 1-stall garage. Now that's under $150,000, but I couldn't even come up with any other examples besides just condos for that price point. Okay, at the price point of $250,000, JJ is giving us 2620 Brooklyn Drive Northeast as an example. You know, this looks like a pretty solid looking, like 1960s, 1970s style 2-story house, 2-stall garage. Looks like it has some potential.
Yeah, so in that price range around 250, there's definitely a lot of options, I feel like, in the Cedar Rapids metro area. And this is probably one of the strong, I guess, components from a housing perspective that Cedar Rapids has, is that at 250,000, you're going to get a wide variety of homes, but probably the most common one you're going to see, which is like Brooklyn, is a 1970 to 1990 built 2-story home is very common in that price range. Usually 3 or 4 bedrooms, usually 2 bathrooms, and you're going to have a 2-car attached garage to it. And usually a little bit bigger lot, typically a little bit deeper, is what we see in that price point.
Okay. So my example for a $250,000 sale that happened this past year was 2616 Ferndale Drive in Iowa City. This one sold for $245,000. It is a small ranch style home. So we're talking little bedrooms, little kitchen. Because the basement was finished off at some point after the house was completed, there is some additional square footage down there in the basement, but without that basement being finished off, it would have felt like a pretty darn small house. 1-stall garage, and located in a just quiet east side neighborhood. This $250,000 and under price point, again, this is rough to find in Iowa City if you really want a single family home. When I have people that come to me with this budget, I really encourage them to at least consider 0 lots, because they're going to end up with a lot more square footage and a much newer style of construction. So if they want the most for their money, they need to consider a 0 lot. If they are dead set on having a single family house, then we're going to be looking at that like 1940s to 1970s small ranches or split foyer style homes. All right, the next price point we're going to talk about here is $350,000. JJ is giving us an example of 187 Barrington Court, Marion. Dang, JJ, this is a nice looking house. It looks very new, very modern, well cared for, nice styling. I like it. Tell me about it.
Yeah, so that property is located in Marion. It was on a cul-de-sac. It's right by the new YMCA in Marion that was just built recently. And so, yeah, when you get to that $350,000 price point, obviously a lot of options open up, but the most common one I see people looking for in that price range is they're looking for a ranch style home. They want that 3-car garage. They want 4 bedrooms, 3 baths, and probably going to have 2,500 plus square feet. And there's definitely a lot of options throughout the city of, Cedar Rapids and the metro area of that. This one in particular was in Marion. Again, it was on a cul-de-sac right by the new Marion Y and by Low Park and the high school. And it was in a great location as well.
Okay, that house looks really new. Is it new construction or almost new construction?
Yeah, not quite new. It's 10 years old. It was built in 2012 is when that property was built.
Okay. So I feel like I'm just being the bearer of bad news about Iowa City real estate and prices here, but you are not going to get anywhere close to new construction for $350,000 here in Iowa City. My example of $350,000 house is 956 East Davenport. And this house is old. It's an old house. It's I think 1910, 1920. I'd have to look it up to be sure. It has had some remodeling done to it. It's got an updated kitchen, but it's still an old house. And for that $350,000 price point, here in Iowa City, you're still not stepping into new construction unless you're looking at a zero lot. The bare minimum to get into new construction here in Iowa City is about $425 to $450, and that's really not whip-de-doo new construction. It's just the starting point of a single family house new construction. You'll usually have 3 bedrooms on the main, 1 or 2 more down in the basement, a 3-stall garage, and your square footage is going to be in that like 22 to maybe 26,000 zone. That's where you have to be to step into new construction here in Iowa City. All right, give me a little insider info about stuff that people might need to look out for in Cedar Rapids, specific to construction, like Orangeburg, derecho damage. Cedar Rapids has had some pretty major floods. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, I'd say there's really, 4 things that I think about in that regard. So one is Orangeburg. So Orangeburg sewer pipeline, it was put into houses 50s, 60s, and a little bit in the early 70s is kind of the most common time frame. So obviously Cedar Rapids has a lot of those properties. So if you are getting a home in that age built, you want to check the disclosure, see if they say there's no Orangeburg. You can also have that sewer line scope. That's something you definitely want to check out because that is an expensive thousands of dollar bill to repair later.
I don't think we have Orangeburg pretty much at all in Iowa City. I've asked around. It's just not a thing here.
Yeah, so I wouldn't say it's prevalent. It's obviously, a lot of it was replaced in the early 80s, but it is something definitely to look out for. And it is something I think people want to scope if that house is in that 30-year window or so, just to make sure that that's taken care of, because you don't want to have a sewer backup and you don't want to replace that sewer line and have a $5,000 to $10,000 repair bill on that on top of that. So the second thing is derecho. Obviously the derecho storm that came through here in 2020 caused a lot of damage insurance claims. And so making sure on the property, one, the market has shifted a little bit here, and it's good to see that inspections are back, because knowing what a buyer is getting and having inspections done on a property when there's such a basically catastrophic event that happened that structurally could affect homes, I think is really important. Also making sure that the insurance claim, when you're going through the process, that there wasn't any insurance claims that were paid out to the seller or the owner that they didn't take care of. So if they paid out for a roof, but there's no new roof on that could affect your coverage on the home when you go to replace it at some point, if there is another hailstorm or something like that.
I ran into that up in Cedar Rapids. When my buyer client went to get a quote for her insurance, there was the insurance company on the Clue report was showing that there was a significant claim, a $37,000 claim, which to me, that's got to be all new roof and all new siding. Yet on the seller's disclosure, nothing, no new roof, no new siding. So we had to figure that out. And in this particular case, it was an error. So we asked for the seller to provide a loss statement from his insurance agent showing every loss that they have taken on that property during the time of his ownership. And there wasn't one. So somehow there was a mistake in recording the information. But that is an important tip, that just because somebody got an insurance payment doesn't necessarily mean that they use that money to fix the house.
Correct. And then that, basically the domino of that then is that becomes something that is potentially not covered by your insurance company as well, or the coverage on it could be greatly reduced.
Yeah.
So, yep. Another thing is the flood of 2008. So the Cedar River that flows through Cedar Rapids, there was a massive flood in 2008. And so a lot of properties in around that river had flood damage in them. And while most of that's disclosed, and obviously we're years past that now, 14 years as of this recording past that event, it is something for people to know. And I feel like it's always important for me as an agent to let buyers know that, there was a flood here in '08, so we may want to double check to see if it is in a floodplain. Is there flood insurance? Because sometimes owners who own a property now may or may not have checked into that. And if someone owns a property with cash, they may not be required to hold flood insurance as well.
Very true. We do have some areas here in Iowa City that are in flood zones, so it's something that we definitely check. I wouldn't say it's widespread, but there are certain neighborhoods where if you're working with an agent who knows neighborhoods, they'll know, oh, hey, like this creek that runs through this neighborhood, it's actually a surprising amount of this neighborhood is within that 100-year flood zone. In terms of derecho damage, Iowa City saw a lot of damage, but not on the scale of Cedar Rapids. Cedar Rapids just looked decimated. So we do have a lot of new roofs here in Iowa City, but I don't think it's on the same scale that you guys had up in Cedar Rapids.
Yeah, we caught the brunt end of that storm coming through, obviously. Yeah, it definitely was catastrophic and how much damage there was and trees taken out. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had a listing up in Cedar Rapids during that time period, and like the roof got ripped off the kitchen and the kitchen flooded and the insulation, and it was a disaster. And it was one of the most stressful transactions I have ever had. And literally there were people walking around on drywall stilts, like slapping drywall up the day we were closing. And I was like, get this done. I had to beg and plead for an electrician to come in and install a new panel. And literally it was a miracle that house closed.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of stuff that went on. I had a property that had the garage completely, it was a one stall detached garage on the southeast side, and it completely blew it. It blew out the side wall, and the garage was in the neighbor's yard. And so, yeah, we were supposed to close 1 week later.
Yeah.
And so that was delayed a little while, but yeah, some of those times you just gotta kind of figure out a common ground and work through those. The one other thing I was going to mention as far as things to be aware of, there are pockets of it, but particularly more on some of the southeast side, termites, getting properties checked for that. Mm-hmm. When you get into some of the wooded areas, which the southeast side and parts of the south part of Marion are more heavily wooded, and so that is definitely something that people want to check into. You can check onto all properties, but when you're in certain areas, it is something where we find that it can be more prevalent to make sure that is there basically a treatment in place or warranty with that. Otherwise, getting those properties tested to make sure that there is no termites in there.
Awesome. Well, thanks for the chat, JJ. I really appreciate it. If anybody is looking specifically in Cedar Rapids, JJ would make a great agent to contact. I'm going to leave his information down below in the description box of this video. If you're watching on your phone, all you need to do is tap the title of this video and that will open up. You'll find my contact information and JJ's. I'm curious, what have you heard about Iowa City and Cedar Rapids? What are some of the attributes of each place? What's the vibe of each place? Tell me about it down below in the comments section. Hey, it's been fun, and I'll catch you later.